The NFL trade deadline just wrapped up yesterday. We got some contenders making moves for some players, for some high end players. Let's be real. For the most part, I would say it was a pretty successful trade deadline. What I will say, a lot of teams that didn't sell that I thought would, and a lot of teams that made moves that I didn't expect. For the most part, it was a pretty unexpected deadline. There was, a couple names that got moved. You know who I'm talking about. Matter of fact, what am I doing wasting time? Let's talk about the two blockbuster trades right off the bat. Both from the New York Jets. Let's start with the first one here. The Indianapolis Colts get on the phone with the Jets and say, yo, what you want for Sauce Gardner? What you want for your young, what is he, third, fourth year guy that you just paid in the offseason, that you just extended? What you want for him? We'll send 2 first-round picks, how about? And we'll throw in Adonai Mitchell for you, A.D. Mitchell, who just cost them a game, basically, against the L.A. Rams, as we all know. The Colts could have been undefeated until that Steelers game just last week, if it wasn't for the A.D. Mitchell fumble, and he had a flag on one of Jonathan Taylor's touchdowns as well. So A.D. Mitchell was just costing them the season almost, if it felt. So it seemed like he didn't necessarily have a role on the team at a certain point. It was an uphill battle for him. And so, hey, you package him in 2 first-round picks, send those to the Jets, and you get back a quality cornerback, okay? Sauce Gardner's rookie year was special. It was absolutely special. But then, he started getting called for his physicality, this and that. He plays a little grabby, let's be real. We'll see if it continues in Indianapolis. All in all, though, like he has the intangibles, he has the tools to be a top corner in the league. I don't think it's out of the question that Shane Steichen won't get the value of Sauce Gardner, and now the Colts have a really dangerous cornerback room with Sauce Gardner, Charvarius Ward, and Kenny Moore in the slot. That's a nice room right there. They are building something nice with the Colts here, and why not? Daniel Jones is playing at a MVP level. Jonathan Taylor maybe is the league MVP. Michael Pittman is having himself a solid year, and the defense really, it felt like all it needed was that strong cornerback, maybe some pass rush help. I'm surprised that this actually wasn't another guy. I'm surprised it wasn't Trey Hendrickson. To be fair, that he didn't get moved. That's one name that we'll get to a little bit later on, that I'm surprised wasn't moved. But yes, the Colts, they get Sauce Gardner. What a move. Unexpected. I don't think anybody really thought Sauce Gardner was on the trade market. For 2 first-round picks and a young receiver, it's tough for the Jets to say no to that offer. It really is. You give them an offer that they can't refuse. That is basically a Micah Parsons type deal. Micah Parsons went for 2 firsts and Kenny Clark. The Jets just got that for a cornerback who has been having some down years. This was an A-plus trade for, I think, both parties. And really, there's an argument that the Jets won this trade, even though they gave away a really good player. 2 first-round picks. Now, of course, the Colts of this year, their pick will be a little bit higher. But next year, who's to say Daniel Jones keeps this up? Who's to say that they don't collapse? So we'll have to see what happens and how that plays in with the Jets. But the Jets weren't done after that. They trade their young defensive tackle superstar, maybe the best defensive tackle in the league, Quinnen Williams, to the Dallas Cowboys. They get a 2nd-round pick this year and a 1st-round pick next year, and former 1st-round pick Mozzie Smith. Quinnen Williams, man, 1 sack, 3 forced fumbles, and 32 tackles on the season. He's been having an incredible year and just an incredible player. And now Dallas, they seemingly flipped Micah Parsons for a 1st-round pick, Kenny Clark, and Quinnen Williams. And now you're thinking, okay, you can kind of get behind that a little bit more. Mozzie Smith, you drafted him in the 1st round. You were hoping that he would be that run stuffer, but he really hasn't lived up to expectations. So you go out and you get a star-studded defensive tackle. And now Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark on the interior, yeah, we're talking, we can stop the run. But the Cowboys, they continue to make moves. They also got Bengals linebacker Logan Wilson, who requested a trade. They just traded a 7th-round pick for him. I think that was also a really good value pick there, value trade. Dallas just needed defensive help in general, all over the place. I was surprised that they didn't go and get Minkah Fitzpatrick from Miami, another guy that I'm surprised wasn't moved. But Logan Wilson, I think he's a solid linebacker, better than almost anything they have. I think Overshawn is still that Mike. Or I guess he's more, I don't know. They play him all over the place. But yeah, Quinnen Williams, I think that's a great trade on both sides. Again, the Jets, you're getting good draft capital. Now you have 3 first-round picks next year. You've got 2 first-round picks this year. That's just great. And there's a real question that the Jets, despite trading away everybody, are the winners of the day. Now, that doesn't come without criticism, okay? Because I was gonna wait till after I get through the trades, but we just have to talk about it now. The Jets did end up keeping Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher, and running back Breece Hall, which I was very shocked about. Now, they held firm on their asking price. For Johnson, they wanted a 2nd-round pick. For Breece, they wanted a 3rd. It sounded like the 49ers and the Bears were most interested in Johnson, but they weren't budging to give that 2nd-round pick, which, as a Niner fan, I'm glad. Jermaine Johnson's a great player, but I do think a 3rd would have been more than fair. Breece Hall for a 3rd, that does seem a little bit more fair. The Chiefs were very interested in Breece. It sounds like the Chiefs offered a 4th-round pick and, again, weren't budging to that 3rd round. And the Saints, they held firm on their asking price. They're going to keep these 2 young guys. We'll see if it pays off. Breece Hall is due for a contract. Jermaine Johnson, I want to say he has maybe 2 more years or 1 more year. It's an interesting move holding on to those 2 guys. If they did flip those guys for picks, now we've got an abundance of picks for the next 2 years. That would have been really intriguing for the Jets. But, I mean, if you can make something happen, if Hall leaves in free agency for nothing, then it does feel a little bit of a waste. Okay, but now let's get into more trades. First and foremost, the Ravens get outside linebacker from the Titans, Draymond Jones. This was actually on Monday before the deadline, a whole day before the deadline, I believe, for a 5th-round pick. And Jones, 4.5 sacks, 9 QB hits this season. The Ravens, they needed that defensive help, especially in the edge rusher position, but they traded away Odafe Owe earlier in the season, so I was a little bit confused as to why they went out for Jones. I feel like Owe is a better player, and Owe's been doing really good with the Chargers. I believe Owe had no sacks with the Ravens, but now he has 4 with the Chargers, which is kind of crazy. So maybe that's why they were just misusing him or something. But very interesting move there. We'll see how it plays out. The Ravens did need that edge rush help, though. They also traded away Jair Alexander to the Philadelphia Eagles. Just kind of a whatever move. The Eagles needed secondary help, and Jair hasn't been the greatest with Baltimore. I'm a little surprised that they let him go. But I don't think that's going to be a game-breaking move for the Eagles. The Eagles also traded for Jalen Phillips, who was the only Miami player that the Dolphins decided to trade, was Jalen Phillips. They got some good compensation for him, though. He's a young player still. He really could be, he could be extended by Philadelphia and be there for the future, which wouldn't be a bad idea at all. If the man can stay healthy, he is an absolute beast. Philadelphia, they've needed that edge rush help on the line. It's been one of their weak spots, the edge position. So getting Phillips in and getting Nolan Smith back as well, it's going to be a big upgrade for that Philadelphia defense. Another trade, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they get Raiders wide receiver Jacoby Myers. The Jags, they trade a 4th and a 6th-round pick. This is a little bit of an interesting trade for me. I didn't really expect the Jags to be in the receiver market, considering you just traded some picks to get Travis Hunter. And yes, I know he's injured. He's on IR. He's going to miss a couple games. But then you've also got Brian Thomas Jr., who you're just kind of hoping starts playing like himself. You hope the drops decrease. And Parker Washington played a really solid game last week. So I really didn't understand this move too much. I'm surprised other teams that needed a receiver weren't on it. Maybe they weren't willing to throw in the 6th-round pick that the Jags did, or maybe they were just offering like a 5th and a 6th. I'm not entirely sure if the Jags outbid for Myers, or maybe they're the only ones interested. But Myers, 33 receptions, 352 yards. Always just kind of that solid vet guy. He's reliable. He just had 1,000 yards just last season. But I think Myers, if he went to the Bills or the Broncos, I guess in division trades is rare, but if he went to the Bills, that would have been nice. So very unfortunate for Buffalo. But the Jags, I mean, I guess, their receiver room does get better. Now Hunter has got a veteran receiver to train with, and Brian Thomas Jr., maybe the drops get lower now that you got Myers there. Maybe he helps Brian Thomas get out of his head a little bit. We'll see how that goes. But the Raiders, I didn't love them trading Myers. I know he requested the trade, but he's been a very solid stand-up guy about it. He never really missed a game, hasn't really stood out of practice or anything. So they lose a solid vet. Maybe this is going to be their key to start getting younger. Maybe you start shedding some of the dead weight on the team. Geno Smith isn't getting any younger, but you've got a solid young core to build around. Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, those two guys can be big pillars on the offense. So we'll see what the Raiders end up doing in the future now with these 4th and 6th round pick, which I actually think is solid compensation for Jacoby Myers. We talked about the Colts. The Seattle Seahawks, another receiver. They get Saints receiver Rashid Shaheed. This is a nice move for Seattle. They trade a 4th and a 5th. Shaheed has been having a nice season, 44 receptions, 499 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's going to be a great addition to that Seattle perimeter. And boy, this explosive offense just got some more gunpowder, man. Shaheed going over the top. You kind of got to pick your poison. Are you going to leave Shaheed with the potential of him getting a one-on-one chance and burning your DB, or you want to try to stop Jackson Smith and Jigba? Both of those guys, I think they're going to complement each other really well. That's going to be a handful. It's going to be a handful. As for the Saints, meh. I mean, I'm glad they made a move, but I feel like they had some other guys that they could have traded away, including Shaheed. I think that they should have gone all in on the rebuild, just like the Jets did. They didn't move Olave, they didn't move Kamara, they didn't move Demario Davis. Like, these guys, I get it. There's this whole bad teams deserve to have good players movement, but you've got nothing going on, especially for the veterans like Demario Davis. Those guys, Kamara, those guys should have been moved, even if you just get a 5th, a 6th round pick, because those things can be packaged. You can maybe move up in the draft. I feel like the Saints should have tried to start getting younger and start getting into that full rebuild mode, like they aren't already. Another one, the Bears get Browns edge rusher Joe Tyrone Shoyinka for a 6th round pick. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The Bears also got a 7th round pick, so really they traded a 6th round pick for a 7th and JTS. Low risk, low reward, in my opinion. JTS was solid in Tampa Bay. He was a former 1st round pick, but I really feel like his name has been kind of quiet since. He's had 9 tackles this season. Just kind of meh. I still think he could be a solid player, especially with the opportunities that he'll get in Chicago now. I remember in Tampa Bay, though, he was a very well put together player. So we'll see how that goes. Browns make a move. The Bears needed edge rush help. It's a very simple, very clean trade there. And then lastly, the Chargers, they get Trevor Penning from the Saints. This was like at the buzzer, basically, as the deadline hit. The Chargers are just so banged up on the offensive line. And, getting a starting, is Trevor Penning starting quality at this point? Probably not, but the Chargers needed offensive line help in any way, shape, and form, with Rashawn Slater missing the entire year, and he got an off-season injury. Joe Alt, I want to say he's out for the rest of the season. They're just so banged up on the offensive line. So I think Penning will be a well-welcomed addition for Los Angeles, and he's got a big ask to protect Justin Herbert now. So we'll see how he does getting coached up by Harbaugh. But yeah, so some surprises that I had was Johnson and Hall. Miami only moving Jalen Phillips. So, Bradley Chubb is still there. Jalen Waddle was in talks a lot about getting traded to Denver. But again, just the asking prices, man. Devon A-Chain was even in rumors. I don't think he was ever going to be moved, but yeah, I still got his name out here. Minkah Fitzpatrick, I'm especially surprised about. I'm mostly surprised about Minkah and Bradley Chubb, to be fair. Those guys are a little bit older, but you can still fetch some value out of them. I think Chubb, you probably could have got a 4th-round pick with how trades are moving this year, a 5th at minimum. Minkah, I'm sure some team would have thrown a 3rd at you. He's still a really good safety. So I'm a little questionable on why the Dolphins didn't move more guys. It could be because they fired Will Grier, their general manager, and maybe he had trades set in place. Maybe he had a price tag on these guys, and now he got fired. So it's like, well, his ideas are out the door too, and we're gonna hang on to these. I'm not entirely sure what the thought process is for Miami, but yeah, not flipping those guys for picks, not a great idea because your season is going downhill, point blank, period. The Bills and the Broncos don't add receiver help. That sucks. That's a big blow on both of those teams that are atop of the AFC, teams that are trying to contend with the Kansas City Chiefs of the world and trying to make a deep postseason run. But without any targets, it's going to be tough. Denver, I think not so much as Buffalo, because Denver still has Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin, who really, he's probably receiver 3 on most teams, forced to be a receiver 2 with Denver. And Evan Ingram, he's not been the tight end that you really expected him to be. So I'm surprised Denver didn't even, make a move at tight end. I'm David Njoku, I'm sure could have gotten moved with how Harold Fannin has been playing. But Buffalo definitely needed receiver help because Keon Coleman hasn't really had that breakout people were wanting. Khalil Shakir has been nice, but you really want that more receiver depth. You really want some help for Josh Allen. And Shaheed would have been perfect for that offense. Oh boy, I can only imagine Shaheed and Shakir. The 49ers don't have edge help at all. They were interested in Jermaine Johnson. They were interested in Bradley Chubb. Ultimately didn't pull the trigger with how injured and banged up they are. Pretty surprising. I really thought that they would add in somebody, especially with Michael Williams tearing his ACL. He's out for the rest of the season. They did trade for Keon White last week, so maybe that's what kind of held them back. They didn't want to lose any more draft picks with how older the roster is getting. Those draft picks become valuable to draft younger guys, draft rookies, as we see this season. Half the team feels like it's young guys, first, second year players. I'm also surprised the Patriots didn't make a move because now they've proved, okay, we can be contenders potentially. They've got a very easy schedule, but they needed some pieces still. I'm surprised that they didn't try to go after a edge rusher or anything. Just anything at all. I'm surprised the Patriots were stagnant today. But all in all, the trade deadline was pretty sick, man. Seeing the Jets just go all in on the rebuild, moving Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams was insane. Those were definitely the headlines of the day. And then some smaller moves, but I think that they're going to end up being really good moves. Like I think Draymond Jones is a really underrated player, a really underrated guy. I'm surprised the Titans didn't move more guys as well, like Arden Key or I guess Arden Key is the main one. I don't think they were trying to move Simmons, but all in all, it just seemed like the prices were kind of high this trade deadline. The Jets were asking for a 2nd-round pick for Jermaine Johnson. I feel like in past years, he's a 3rd, maybe a 4th-round pick guy, with all due respect. You're selling. Breece Hall for a 3rd. Again, another guy who in past years feels like he could have gone for, I think a 3rd is pretty fair. Maybe a 4th. I mean, ultimately, the ship is sinking. You want to shed these guys for picks. Yes, you want fair compensation, but I don't know. The prices just seemed high. I think 2 first-round picks and a player for a cornerback, it was kind of surprising. Sauce Gardner, maybe the Colts just feel it, that they wanted to go all in. But yeah, the prices were just high. The teams were not willing to pay. And so it seemed like the sellers didn't really sell. They didn't really budge on their asking price, especially the Jets. I'm very curious what Miami was thinking, not moving Chubb or Minkah, but also Waddle. It was a weird trade deadline. You were expecting more trades to go down. Well, I guess I don't know if you were. I was expecting more trades to go down. But ultimately, I'm pretty satisfied. It was pretty sick. As a Niner fan, I was anxiously waiting for the Niners to make a move. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And I hope your teams made a move, and I hope you're happy with the moves that your team's made. But folks, that'll wrap it up for this episode. If you liked it, hey, please leave a like. Get down there, leave a comment. Let's talk. What moves did your team make? What moves do you wish your team made? While you're down there, take a look at the description where all the other social medias are, the TikTok, the Instagram, the Twitter, all that good stuff. Folks, I will see you in the next one. Peace out.